Hello, 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 and welcome to the Language Lab podcast. My name is Siad, and this is my podcast video thing where I talk about experiments, things happening in my language learning life. And today's episode, rather, is not as much of an experiment or an update or a review as much as I would just like to talk and consider something that I've been spending way too much time thinking about over the past couple of weeks. I've talked to many people about this. By many, I mean at least two. And so I'll be really curious to hear the people who watch this video what you all have to think, what you all have thoughts on as it relates to what I want to talk about. So today, I would like to talk about spelling in your target language or in language learning. And I realized that I had not seen very many people talk about spelling, learning how to spell in a language that you are learning, in a language that you don't speak, that you didn't have any kind of formal schooling or education in. So I wanted to talk about it. It's been on my mind because I'm realizing that a couple of things. So I know not everyone has this, but I have an internal dialogue. So that means that there's always thoughts, things happening, numbers, counting, spelling. And often when I'm writing, I notice that I spell things out, even in English. And of course, I do this a lot in Spanish, which is a language I have been learning for the longest time. And I've had some, I guess, sort of formal classes in high school. So I have some ability to spell there from that. But during those classes, we had spelling tests and things like that to sort of test our working memory and our knowledge of what we had studied and what we had learned in class. So in that way, I did practice spelling. But with French and with Japanese and with ASL even, American Sign Language, learning how to spell is different in all of those languages. And I am a terrible speller in English. I spell things incorrectly all the time. So you can imagine how difficult it is to learn to spell in four of the languages. It's not easy. But I have not heard anyone talk about it. And I think because it's not something that people pay attention to, there are a lot of people who are learning languages who have no intention of ever writing or using any kind of written communication to use the language. And I feel that that is not going to be true for me and how I want to learn languages and how I'm learning them. I've told you all that I want to take language tests, language proficiency tests, and that means you have to learn how to spell a little bit. You can spell things incorrectly. I've taken a language test before. I spelled things wrong and I passed. But the point is that you do need to know how to spell a little bit. And as a person who is spelling challenged in their first language, it is hard. And so I'm learning because I want to be able to communicate. But I think a lot of the advice that I hear is that you will slowly just absorb how to spell things over time, which I don't disagree with. I think that is actually true. The more time that you spend doing something over a longer period of time, even, you will absorb some of the language and you will absorb some of the spellings and the order that letters go in words and things like that. But I do think, I don't know, I feel like it's a little bit more complicated than that. Like, oh, in 10 years, I'll just know how to spell every word that I want to in French. Like, maybe that'll be true. And maybe I'll come back to this video and this podcast in 10 years and say, huzzah, I absorbed all the spelling. I didn't need to try. I didn't need to do practice. I didn't need to write things down, but that's probably not going to be true. I enjoy writing things down and learning how to spell is part of that. So yeah, but I just realized that no one talks about spelling and how you learn words. And you do that by reading, yes, but it's just not the same as when you produce a word and you have to know the order that the letters go in. And so I'm thinking about this too because I do want to improve my spelling. Even in English, I want to improve my spelling. But I want to make sure that with French and with ASL, where knowing the spelling of some of the words is really important because not all words have signs. I am thinking about how to do that. And one of the ways is using textbooks, because in textbooks you do, at least the way that I use textbooks, I do write things down. So writing is part of that. Copying things. I read a blog post a little bit ago about someone who copied an entire book down by hand in Italian. I think it was The Little Prince. And I am actually probably going to do that at some point in my life. Not this year, but I can totally see myself committing to copying down a book and hoping that two things happen at the end, that my ability to read in that language is better, and also my ability to spell because I've copied an entire book. But yeah, I think that it's just sort of assumed that you'll figure it out. And I'm here to say that maybe you will, and that I probably won't just figure it out. So I'm going to do some kind of practice with it. I was also thinking of, speaking of practice, I was also thinking of a way to potentially do spelling tests, but I haven't quite figured out how to do that. Of course, I can just have someone ask me the words. I can also listen and do transcription, so just writing down what I hear, which brings me back to music school and having to write down things that you hear in music class. But anyway, maybe I'll do that. But I know that I want to improve my spelling. I know that I do not want to simply rely on autocorrect or any kinds of other digital tools and systems that will just fix my spelling. Because while it will fix my spelling, it will fix my spelling in whatever program I'm using, and before anyone else sees it, it doesn't mean that I actually have learned how to spell. It just means that I've learned how to rely on spell check, which is also the problem in English too. So yeah, spelling. I would like to know, do you think about this consciously? This also came up for me because I was thinking, as I was doing exercises in my French textbooks, I was noticing that when I would go to copy things down and that I already knew how to spell, I was still saying and spelling them in English. And I probably need to try to, spell things out in the language that I'm learning. So sounding things out in the language that I'm learning. But that's also where this came up for me. So yeah, I want to know, do you practice this? Do you think about it? Do you care? Am I just thinking about this way, way too deeply? It's totally possible that I am, but I would like to hear your thoughts. So yeah, send me a message. I'm around. I'm in the comments on YouTube. And yeah, I will look forward to hearing what everyone has to say. Thanks so much for listening, and I will be back with another one of these podcast episode video things in a little bit.